code. That won't be an issue. I will accommodate you with Notepad, because the same things if you copy the text that I have here, you you have that same text in a note file like I showed last time. So it has essentially the same features, and we'll be using Chrome as a browser to run the HTML file, so you won't have an issue. We won't be using the split or design features in Dreamweaver, but as we said last time, we are looking for alternatives. We discussed. Okay. Last time we discussed tags. We talked about the HTML tag, the head, like individual tags, and we moved on to paragraphs, which are used to add text. We had the strong tag essentially to show you, okay, whatever is between two tags is what it act on, and then we added a link to the entirety of that text. What we'll be talking about today is more about how you can order or arrange your content in an HTML file. So I'll just create a new file. Could, could everyone else please keep your mics muted? Thank you. Right. So for those of you who are on Notepad, just copy whatever will appear when I create the new file. Okay. So have to create a new document. You can do all of this in the last one as well. So if you already have that, just make sure that you add everything between the two body tags. Body tags, sorry, the two body tags. अगर उनके दरमियान ऐड किया तो कोई मसला नहीं होगा, right? So we're in code here. So yeah, right. So we'll start. The first tag that I want to talk about today is called the list tag. So essentially, what we use it for is to create lists. Now there are two kinds of lists in HTML. You can edit them in whatever way you want in CSS later on, but in HTML you have two basic kinds of lists. One is an unordered list, or for which the tag is UL, and the other is an ordered list, for which the tag is OL, right? So for an unordered list, basically what you have in our list is bullet points, right? Without any elements added on, you get text and bullet points. So for each bullet point, you have to use this list tag, right? Wait a second. Yeah. So anything you add here between these two tags will show up as one bullet point. So for example, so I don't really have anything else to write. I'll just go with my name is Maair again. My name is, sorry. So just a side note, indentation in HTML does not matter at all. The only thing it helps with is convenience. So agar is tarah bhi ho, to nothing matters. It doesn't matter at all. But just for convenience sake, if you have tags that are inside another tag, so indent uska badha do ya kam kar do. That'll just help you go through the document later on and find out any errors if there are any. Right. So okay. So let me just save this in the folder we have here. List, right? Because this is a list. Right, so I'll open it in a browser. Open. If anyone has any questions at any point, you can leave them in the chat box and I will get to that once. Right, so as you see, this is an unordered list. We have bullet points and everything in between these list tags is a bullet point. Now you have an ordered list, right? So the difference between an unordered list and an ordered list is that an ordered list has numbering with it, right? So if the syntax between the two tags for the unordered list and ordered list is the exact same. You'll have one open list open tag and one list close tag, right? But the way you see it when you open it in a browser will be different. And so if I copy this exact so if I copy this, right, and I paste it here, and Control S, paste. एक तरफ I have bullet points, content same है, एक तरफ I have numbers, right? So this is one way of arranging your content in an HTML format, right? So आगे you can do a lot of things to this using CSS, right? But HTML की हद तक this is essentially the maximum you can do. Before I move forward, does anyone have any questions about this specific part of the lesson today? I don't see any as of right now, so just move on. If there are any, I will cover them later on. Right, so lists are very important when you have to order things, right? They come into use later on, especially when you have to add multiple buttons, for example, menus, जिसमें list होती है. लेकिन another way to make a menu is to use a table, right? So I'll just staying on the same document here. The tag for a table is table, right? So if you are using Notepad, you won't get the second tag automatically, but that doesn't matter. What I'll do as well is I will send all of these sample HTML files into the Google Classroom, so that if anyone who's using Notepad, they can just download. You have three tags. The first one is called the table row tag, which is TR, right? This is one row in a table. उसके अंदर you have two kinds of content tags, a table heading tag and a table data tag. So for a table heading tag, if you've seen like any normal table on any platform, you have one row with bold headings, and then उनके नीचे सारा data arranged हुआ होता है. So by default, table heading tags, the text or the content within a table heading tag will always be bold and it will be center aligned. And table data will always be left aligned and it will not be bold, right? So for example, we have, this is this over here, this tag represents the first row in a table. So let me just add a few headings here, right? Name, th, class, and th, grade. So you have three headings. Let me just save this and refresh. Right, so this appears as a table. You'll just see what I mean in a second. And now I want to add a second row, right? Same tag as last time, but this time instead of using TH, I'll be using TD because I want to add data under a heading, right? TH was for adding a heading. Now I want to add data under a specific heading, right? So the first tag and close tag will be for the first column, second one will be for the second column, third one will be for the third column, and so on, right? So first column, second column, third column. उसी तरह name, say Ali, right? Class 6, and the grade he got was an A, right? So you can save this. Take table बन गया, right? उस नीचे अब name के नीचे Ali आ गया, first column, class के नीचे 6, second column, and grade A. इसी तरह we copy this because this is the general format we'll be following आगे, because this is a 3-column table, and so we now have Fatima, who is in class 4, and she got a B, right? Similar, Ahmed, class 12, and he got a D, right? So if I refresh, और जिस तरह मैं content का size बढ़ाया, उसी तरह वो table भी adapt करेगा, right? Because I haven't added any CSS elements, right? Once we get to CSS, you'll find out how you can increase the width of the table, which you can also do here, in fact. So width 78 pixels. एक second, sorry. Right, so I increased the table width, so the entire table is now, it covers 300 pixels on the screen. इसी तरह, if I make that 700 pixels, so it covers 700 pixels, right? If I turn this into a percentage, for example, 100%, it will cover the entire width of the screen. और वो खुद ही फिर छोटा बड़ा होता रहेगा, right? So this table, right, the headings and the data. Now, interestingly, with tables, your data can also be, so for example, if I add a link here, I add a link here. Second, let me just fix this here. Oh, sorry. यहाँ पे, right? So ये link है, right? And I close it here. So अब ये अहमद का नाम is now a link to google.com, right? So within a table, the table is essentially just to arrange the content or arrange the data that you want in a certain way. Now within one cell of a table, you can edit it in whatever way you want, right? You can add anything you want, right? So you can have a video, you can have an audio file, which will also tell you how to add later on. You can have text, you can add elements to the text, right? For example, last time we made the text strong by adding different tags, if you remember the strong tag, right? So for example, अगर यहाँ करें हम इसको यहाँ से कट करके Control X, Control V, right? So उसी तरह yeah, the name Fatma here is now bold because we added these tags. So the table, it's very useful. We'll be looking into it later on in CSS as well, because you can edit a lot of things in the presentation layer. But as far as the content layer is concerned, you can use it. This is essentially how you can use it. Another very important, very useful feature of tables is that they are very convenient when you have to take responses from other people. So
Hello,
for
sir.
example, yes. Did anyone? Yeah, someone has their hand up. Do you have a question? Right. So.
Excuse me, sir. ये आप मैं भी अभी join हुई ये सब आप क्या करवा रहे हैं?
जी. So we just discussed lists and tables. End पे I will मैं वो भी दूंगा एक summary भी दे दूंगा, but you haven't missed much. ये record भी हो रही है मेरा ख्याल है, so I think you'll be able to access
Yes,
this
sir,
later.
okay.
So yeah, so tables in the content layer are just ways to organize your data in whatever way you want. Headings यहाँ पे by default have certain settings, and the data you add by default have certain settings. You can change all of that in CSS. If any of you are on Dreamweaver, one thing you can do is that you can, so यहाँ पे what we did was we changed the width of the entire table to be 100%. But if you are in Dreamweaver, you can change the width of individual columns via the split or the design section, right? By simply using your mouse and just dragging. And so what this lets you do is it adds a bit of an interactive element between you and your HTML code. वरना तो सारा कुछ on Notepad it's all text and you have to edit the text. यहाँ पे you have this convenience of sorts. So if you are on Dreamweaver, this is one advantage you have. Right. So does anyone have any questions about tables as of right now, or do you want me to move on to adding images, videos, and sound files to HTML documents? I will give you 2 minutes. Ask any questions. Uh, for anyone who has joined right now, you will be able. I think you will be able to access this later on. But if you aren't, just let me know in the next class, and I will explain this all briefly to you again. Is my voice not clear? Someone just mentioned that my voice isn't clear. Is my voice? If anyone else thinks my voice isn't clear, I can turn off the fan. I think that might be causing an issue. Okay, right. Second. So, okay, yes. Seeing as there aren't any questions, I will move on. If you have any questions, if you can ask them later on as well. Right. So the next thing we'll be covering is adding images to an HTML file. Right. Before that, okay, let me just search uh, images. Let me just get like a random photograph. I think it's a problem with your internet because I have asked everyone else. उनके लिए सही है. तो because यहाँ पे भी I don't think there's any problem. If anyone else also has a problem, just let me know. But I think it's a problem with your internet. Okay, so image dot jpg, right? So to add an image to an HTML file, what you have to do is उसका एक tag है. That tag is called right. So the first thing that you have to do is to define source, where the browser has to look for that image. We saved it in the same folder as the file, तो हमारा source सीधा सीधा उसका नाम होगा, right? And I'll also tell you what to do if you save it into a folder. So for example, we've named it image.jpg, right? Now another thing you can do is, for example, if you've ever been to a website with bad internet, or some plugin which isn't working, you'll see text in place of an image, right? So instead of an image, you have like this small symbol, and then likha hoga saath, for example, photo of a road, say. So that is the alt text. Yahan pe, let's say this is a photo, right? This only appears when when the browser isn't able to load your image or isn't able to find your image. This is a one-time a self-closing tag. यहाँ पे जिस last time we discussed the BR tag, you don't have to add a closing tag to this, right? So because Google के कोई मसले होते हैं, it has some issues loading images. I have no idea why. यहाँ पे if you look in design, तो I don't really know why this happens. This has happened to me a lot of times. Online होगा तो बिल्कुल सही हो जाएगा. But basically, we've added an image here. Right, this is the code for an image. You've defined your source, and the image isn't loaded. It hasn't loaded because of an issue with the browser, for example. And so this is the message you'll get. It will say this is a photo. If there's no alt text, say for example, kuch bhi nahi, if this is empty, तो कुछ भी नहीं आएगा. So essentially, if you see this symbol over here, this symbol over here, it means that from your end, koi masla nahi hai, and the image has been uploaded. Now the browser is having a problem displaying that image. Okay, so if, for example, you've saved that image in a folder, right, that changes things very slightly, right? So yahan pe I create a new folder, I name it images, and I move this image into the folder, right? Control S and I refresh. So look, it says automatically I move my mouse over this and it says image not found because that image isn't there anymore. So it shows me that photograph, right? So folder name / image.jpg, which is what we named. So name of name of folder slash name of file. That's your source. When you add the content to a when you add the content to a folder, right? So the alt text is essentially what you want the browser to display if there's any problem loading your image. Otherwise, it doesn't really play a role. If you don't have alt text, no problem at all. If the image doesn't load, it just won't show anything. So for example, if you're adding a photograph to a background and you just want it to be there and agar load nahi hoye to koi masla nahi, you don't want anything to appear in space. You add no alt text and the image will not display. And there won't be any indications that there was a photo there in the first place, right? So that's very useful when you're adding images for a design element. But for example, if you're writing an article, if you're running a website for a news agency, for example, or an image लगाई है just a uh, add to that article, yeah, if it's talking about a specific person तो उस बंदे की photo है, तो फिर the alt text would be photo of XYZ person, just so if the photo doesn't load, the reader still knows कि अच्छा यहाँ पे जो photo है इसी बंदे की है. So that's why you have that option of having no alt text and adding alt text if you want. So because of some issues with Chrome, I think, I'm not sure, but this confirmation that my code, the text that the code I've added is correct and that the image is being detected by the HTML file. So if you're on Notepad, this message is enough for you. But if you're on Dreamweaver, if you move your cursor over this text and you see this photo, the photo that you added, that means that the masla isn't from your end, right? If anyone has any questions, abhi tak, sorry. So another thing you can do is you can alter the size, the width, and the height, right? So width, say 100%, and height, say 500 pixels, right? So percent is essentially percentage of the pixels on screen, yeah, in the window, and 500 pixels is just a defined value कि चाहे जितनी बड़ी window हो उतने ही pixels लेंगी. So for example, when you reduce the size, so एक size तो obviously ये है, फिर एक size ये है, फिर then you have this size. So हर size में window का size फर्क हो रहा है, number of pixels भी change हो रहे हैं. लेकिन if you say कि I want my height to be a constant 500 pixels, so your height will be a constant 500 pixels no matter how big or small the window is. If you say you want your height to be 100%, then it will be the entire size of your window. If you say your width is 100%, so percentages are scalable, pixels are not scalable, right? That's the difference. If you want something to be the exact same size, chahe jo marzi ho, you use pixels. There are also other formats which we'll be discussing later on, but for now, percentages and pixels are two different things that you should be using, right? So there's a problem with my browser, I think. I don't know, but this example will work much better when I move on to videos because those loaded when I checked in the beginning. But is everyone clear about how to add images and also about this width and height feature, pixels and percentages? Because if you aren't, I can explain it again. So if there are any questions as well, as of this point, please let me know. Okay. Right. So.
I do have one question. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I'm a bit confused. How does Dreamweaver even know that this particular folder exists within your own computer?
Right, because you've given it a source now. Dreamweaver के बाद जब आप source define कर देते हैं ना, तो वो automatically उस source में देखते हैं and then it shows it to you. So because that's what it's designed to do, right? So this is it doesn't show it in the design section obviously because that takes unnecessary computational power. But once you've defined a source, so Dreamweaver as a program can find that source.
And even if the file isn't saved, suppose like the file that you're working on right now, if you hadn't saved that file, it would still detect it?
If I hadn't saved this Dreamweaver file.
Yeah.
अच्छा नहीं, so if I hadn't saved this file but I have added this source, नहीं तब नहीं, because then this images folder only exists in the folder that this Dreamweaver file is in ना, तो तब नहीं करता. लेकिन फिर मुझे ये करना पड़ता कि I had to give the entire directory, फिर disk drive C, desktop, cyber allies, images, and then image JPG. But because this Dreamweaver file is saved in the same folder, this HTML file essentially is saved in the same folder as this folder called images, so वो फिर it automatically looks in the folder that it exists in. If it say on the desktop, yeah, you know, in a different folder, I have to give the entire directory. But because you know we're designing this for use on an online server, तो वहाँ पे इसी तरह होता है कि you know you have all your HTML files in one folder and then you have an images folder, तो link वहीं तक करना होता है. But yeah, if they aren't in the same folder, yeah, you know they aren't in the same place, you have to give the entire directory. फिर तभी detect होगा, वरना detect नहीं होगा. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
So if there aren't any more questions, I will move on to the next thing. Right. So the next thing you can add, I just remove this here. The next thing you can add with HTML is sound, right? Audio clips. So for an audio clip, a second, let me just check if I have that audio clip saved in that folder and what it's named. Right. Yeah. So I have it saved here. Perfect. Okay. So for an audio clip, what you have to do is the tag is called audio, and so this control, ये जो control वाला चीज़ है, you'll know why I added later on when it's executed. But what you essentially have to do is यहाँ पे भी the same thing, you have to define your source. यहाँ पे the only reason I'm doing it अंदर भी कर सकता, like I can do it in the same section as well, like इसी के अंदर ही like you know इसी के आगे source define कर दूँ, but for convenience sake मैं इस तरह कर रहा हूँ. Source. So I called my audio file. One second. Let me just move these controls out of the way. Yeah, so I called my audio file audio.mp4. Okay. And because this is in the same folder, Dreamweaver automatically recognizes कि अच्छा वहाँ पे एक फाइल है जिसका नाम audio mp3 है. अब इसका type define करूँगा मैं. This is an audio clip and it is in the format mp4, right? So let me just execute this. So can everyone, so did everyone hear that? So this is inside your क्या कहते हैं HTML file, right? So if you upload this audio clip as well as this HTML file, तो वो audio clip इस तरह आपके उसमें आ जाएगा. Controls, ये जो ये है, this controls right here, this prompts this controls वाला, ये जो ये this audio control and this playback bar, right? If you don't have this, तो वो खुद ही play होना शुरू हो जाएगा. This gives you an element of control over the audio that you're playing, right? इसमें because you know इसमें कोई वो वाला नहीं है width वगैरह का. इसमें एक चीज़ है कि if you add text here, for example, not supported से, और यहाँ पे मैं फाइल का नाम गलती से गलत लिखा है, सही, उस जिसकी वजह से वो लोड नहीं होगा, तो कुछ भी नहीं होगा, right? If I remove this control here, I mean this is probably a feature with HTML5. My apologies, just don't do that then. Right, yeah, so अगर control एक सेकंड, हाँ, तो let me just show you what happens if I don't have controls there. कुछ भी नहीं हो, it won't play at all, right? So depending on your browser, it'll either not play at all or just start playing automatically. So controls, and so you see controls and you play. if you're using, for example, an OGG file, which is another type of format, if you're sorry, an accident over here, MP3. Yeah, so type B. Why this error didn't really matter at all in the end? Because when you're defining type, so for most browsers, they automatically recognize that ये MP3 file है, but for some browsers which aren't up to date, or which are less advanced, unko they sometimes don't have the ability automatically detect. तो उनके लिए क्या करना होता है कि you have to specify type. मैंने यहाँ पे I wrote MP4 instead of MP3, but that didn't matter because Chrome automatically detected कि अच्छा ये MP3 file है and it automatically played that file, right? Other browsers as well, if you saw, I added text here. Some browsers, if they can't play audio file, they won't just show blank controls. जिस तरह तब हुआ था, they'll show that text कि अच्छा your audio is not supported, and so depending on your browser, or depending on what platform you're on. So phones पे फर्क होता है, desktop पे फर्क होता है, different plugins and everything. So being cautious is better than ending up having a messy website at the end. Right, so this is how you add audio. Very simple. Just have the audio file in the same folder. So for example, अगर मैंने audio file यहाँ से images में move कर दी, right? तो वही करना होगा मुझे. I'll remove this and I'll write images ऑडियो MP3, राइट. ऑटोमेटिकली उसने डिटेक्ट कर लिया क्योंकि मैंने वो डायरेक्टरी डाली है, उसके पास एक्सेस है उस डायरेक्टरी में हर फाइल का जो पॉसिबली हो सकती है इस टैग में डल सकती है, या एक्चुअली इस डॉक्यूमेंट में डल सकती है, because it's also giving me the option for image JPG, right? But if I add image to audio, it won't do anything, right? It'll just mess it up entirely. So I add audio MP3 here and it'll work just as it did pehle, right? So okay, does anyone have any questions about the audio tag? Nahin, okay, so we'll move on to the video tag, right? So today's class essentially focused on content, how to arrange your content and how to add certain different kinds of content other than paragraphs, text, headings and everything, right? So for the video tag, similar to the audio tag, video controls उसी वजह के लिए ताकि video automatically या play होना शुरू हो जाए या play हो ही ना. Then you add your source. We already have a video added here, right? So it's called video.mp4 source. src, okay. video.mp4 because वो folder के अंदर ही है तो automatically उसने मुझे option दे दिया video.mp4. अच्छा, this is glitch in Dreamweaver, right? So and then I type. Again, it isn't important in all cases to define type, but if you do, it is just that added sense of like surety ke ye chal jayega, right? So here is a video as well. Right, so you can see the video and you can also hear the audio here. यहाँ पे सारे controls हैं, you have full screen, you have the option to download as well. Sorry, picture in picture, I think you have download on Chrome and sorry for that again, and then audio as well, right? So this is HTML's inbuilt player. We will talk about how to embed videos from YouTube as well, but इसना ये होता है कि you don't have उसना there are problems associated with this, and then there are also problems associated with embedding videos on YouTube, right? So for this, acha, so what the freedom that Dreamweaver gives you here is that in some cases you are that's only for images, my mistake. You are able to one second, if I'm spelling that right. No, sorry, source में डालना था, my mistake. Width, right? Yeah, so 100%. and height. Yeah, so this is because our image failed to load. This is how I'll be showing you how height and wait, right. So it's covering the entirety of the browser window when I turn it to full screen. Abhi bhi height utni hai, but the width it's increased to fill the entire screen. If for example अगर मैं height को भी 100% कर दूं, so if you see the height is constant, right? अगर मैं if I reduce size इस तरह भी sorry इस तरह भी तो height is again constant. So अब मैं height को 100% कर देता हूँ है. Now you'll see it will automatically adjust itself according to the window size. Right? अब because क्या कहते हैं it doesn't change its aspect ratio, right? So height is restricted in some degree by the width of the video. So you can't have both at 100% if it warps the video size. लेकिन if for example you have an image तो कभी कभी उसको stretch कर देता है. Videos के लिए वो ज़्यादा मुश्किल होता है. So that's why most people prefer to have constant height or constant width and then have the other elements scalable to fit the window size. You can in CSS you have a lot more options. You have more adaptive options which alter the size of videos and images according to the size of the window without you actually having to use this percentage here. ताकि मतलब, and the other thing you can do with CSS is to have different sizes in different sizes of content in different sizes of windows. मतलब, for example, you can have say a video at 100% width on a desktop, but then on a phone it could be at 50% width, for example. So इस तरह की चीजें that you can do in CSS. HTML content layer में आप उस तरह की चीजें नहीं कर सकते without adding elements of CSS. Right, so that's how you add a video, and that is also all we have time for. I think I'll discuss embedding links in the next class. So if anyone has any questions about today's lesson, please ask Abhi, and then I'll just give a recap for those who joined late. But Hani, if anyone has any questions as of right now, if anyone wants me to repeat any part of this lesson, you can ask me now. Actually, before I get to questions, something I wanted to show you. If I can cut this from here and I add this to say a table, right? tr td control v control s, right? So now this is part of the table, right? वो first column में आ गया है. दूसरी चीज is again td. So as I said पहले, sorry, control x and then control v. Sorry, as I said पहले, you will find glitches, a lot of glitches when you're using only HTML, just now viewer. But essentially, you can have this content inside tables as well, right? So that is something to consider, especially when you're using CSSR. So the fact of the matter is, if you are using CSS, there's a lot of freedom that you have, and we will be covering CSS in this session. So क्या कहते हैं, when HTML and CSS are combined, it's just much more convenient. See, just अभी it's glitching out. This पहले यहाँ पे space कम थी because they were part of the same table. Now there's more space here. But in CSS you can define which part you want where, how wide you want certain elements without having to go into HTML to do all that. Right. So if you're trying anything and you experience like weird glitches here and there, don't worry, वो normal होता है, especially when you aren't using CSS. Right. So if anyone has any questions, I will just move on to a summary for today's lesson. Right. You have like 2-3 minutes asking. You can unmute yourself if you want and ask any questions. I'm arranging this पहले की तरह ताकि when I upload this, you can like understand this आसानी से. Also, one more thing, when I do upload this, you'll have to change these directories to local directories. And anything that doesn't have, a World Wide Web address before it is a local directory. And if it doesn't exist on your computer, it won't like register as any element. So, for example, so I removed that from the table and it just went to full width. It was full width inside uh, that that block of the table. I think it's called. Yeah. So for today's lesson, Saram,
I guess move on. ठीक है.
I think we should move on. We'll discuss embedding and division sections, anchor links in our next lesson on Saturday, which will be our last lesson for HTML. Right. So in summary, today we discussed arranging content in an HTML document. Right. You have, for the first thing we discussed was unordered lists. Unordered lists by default add bullet points shown here, highlighted here. This is an unordered list. Each list tag, each list tag here represents one bullet point here. So it's highlighted over here. This set of code here translates to this over here. Sorry, second. हाँ, तो ये दोनों चीजें जो है हाईलाइट जो भी सिलेक्ट हुई हैं, these ये इसका कोड है और ये इसका how you see the content, you access it as a user. ठीक है. और ये ordered list है. Ordered list automatically data को बेहतर तरह से arrange करने के लिए होती है. In previous versions of HTML, I think it was called it was meant for indexing, but now it's just been added as a general feature. So numbers, right? Only difference here, bullet points and numbers, वरना बाकी सारा कुछ same है, right? तो अगर यहाँ पे tag UL होता, for example, अगर यहाँ पे मैं UL कर दूँ इसको, तो sorry, I get the exact same thing, right? There's no difference. The only difference is, the word, the tag that you use. Oh, sorry, I added a 0 here. The tag that you use initially, right? So those are lists. The next thing we discussed were tables. Tables essentially help you to, if you've ever used Excel or anything, help you to categorize data, with headings. And that's essentially what they're used for in HTML as well. HTML में added उनकी वो होती है थोड़ी सी usability in forms. If you use additional languages and you add snippets of code from other languages, you can create forms and everything. We will also hopefully be able to teach you how to do that. But if you're just using HTML, you can add separate hyperlinks to each specific जो data set अंदर डाला है आपने, right? Headings, you can give each column different headings, and it's fairly intuitive. Like मतलब this over here, sorry, यहाँ से मैं इसको जरा कर दूँ just so that's easier for you to understand. This entire tag here, table वाला, it translates to this set. अच्छा, so just so it's easier for you to understand, यहाँ पे I'll add a few line breaks, तो ताकि सारा कुछ separate हुआ. तो हाँ, तो this is the table here, ये वाला पूरा section, and you can see each of them is an independent element in its own little queue box. Sorry, yeah. So this is a way to arrange your data. Next, we talked about adding images, right? Uska I write it here for your own, for your convenience. Image source, image .jpg. This is close. So the line, this tag right here is just for your convenience, ताकि थोड़ी सी space हो and you can tell individual elements apart. Right. So this is a photo load नहीं हुई. For some reason, this is a problem with my browser. Sorry about that. But this is essentially क्योंकि oh sorry, हाँ अभी तो load होगी भी नहीं वैसे because it's inside the folder. So यहाँ पे आ जाएगा this image right here, right? So that's how you add an image. Images are very useful. Alt text is all text as well. I explained how you use that. If your image is purely for aesthetic purposes, don't have alt text. If it's usable, if it's informative, have alt text. That's generally accepted, right? Video controls, you have width and height. Width and height ये आप image में भी लगा सकते हैं, ये आप table में भी लगा सकते हैं. Basically किसी भी element का आपने width और height जो कि जो एक content है other than paragraphs, right? Other than paragraphs, if you want to change the height and width of any interactive element, you use width and height. In width and that makes it much easier, but this is one way to do it solely with HTML. Then you define the source. This is very important. अगर source नहीं होगा तो फिर आपको आपके ब्राउजर को पता ही नहीं होगा कि जी मैंने ये कंटेंट कहाँ से लेना है, तो it will just show an error or show nothing at all. Same goes with audio में क्योंकि कोई आपने scalable आपकी कोई फिजिक वो इमेज टाइप चीज़ है ही नहीं, सिर्फ आवाज़ है, तो उसमें विड्थ और हाइट का कोई यूज़ है ही नहीं, राइट? तो वहाँ पे भी आपने सोर्स डिफाइन करना. डोंट डिफाइनिंग द सोर्स इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज इवन द स्लाइटेस्ट टाइपो ओवर हियर will make sure कि आपकी वो चीज़ डिस्प्ले नहीं हो, and then it's a very hard process going through the entire document and finding कि अच्छा यार मैंने गलती कहाँ की, ये चीज़ डिस्प्ले क्यों नहीं. So Dreamweaver gives you the convenience of at least with images खाली कि वो आपको जिस तरह की pop-up windows दिखा देता है, और with videos and अच्छा so with images तो आपको ना आप फोल्डर का नाम बताते हो, वो आपको ब्राउज करने की ऑप्शन भी देता है, ब्राउज से वो एक विंडो खुल जाती है, राइट? तो दिस विंडो opens up and I just select images, go to audio, right? So I click on this, वो उसका पूरा source as it is आ गया. That's one of the advantages of using Dreamweaver, right? So and that's how you add audio. This has been our class for today. Next time we will have our class on Saturday where we'll be discussing divisions, right? We'll be discussing sections. We'll be discussing giving IDs to sections, like giving bookmarking, or giving them IDs, which is called bookmarking. We'll be discussing that. And we'll also hopefully be moving on to how to add snippets of CSS in line with your HTML code, right? So style elements within HTML rather than a separate style sheet, which we'll also cover in further class. So please join us on Saturday at 6 when we'll move on to all those things. I'll be sending this HTML file to the Google Classroom as well. So if you need a reference, this will be available for you. If there are any questions as of right now, you can ask them. Or you can drop them in the Google Classroom as well. Your choice entirely. But because it's 7:01 now, you are free to leave. This class is we won't be learning anything else. Saram, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I guess that's fine.
Sahi. Okay, perfect.